I'm gonna get attacked by my dog. Ow! Alright. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We have a hyper guest who is trying to eat me right now. Anyway, for today's video, I decided that we are going to tier rank every single book that I rated 5 stars. I feel like I should preface this by saying I am very easily entertained. It does not take a lot for me to, or I should say, it takes a lot for me to like hate a book. Like, it really is not hard. If it has an interesting plot, I think I've talked about this before. If it has an interesting plot and I like the characters, I'm more times than not going to finish the book. And so I feel like I might have some controversial 5-star takes in this video. There's definitely some books on here that I've seen people rate really low that are 5-star, but I decided that it might be fun to rank them. So I'm trying to think if there's any other prefaces I should make. If it's a 5-star series, like every single book in the series is rated 5 stars, I only included the first book, but there are some series where only specific books were 5 stars, so in those I didn't. He's about to pee. All right, so now that all of that is out of the way, let's just get started. I'll go through the tiers super quickly. So the bottom tier, we have How Did We Get Here? I feel like this tier is really going to capture the books that I honestly just don't even remember giving a 5-star, or that I don't know how I ever thought was worthy of a 5-star. And just kind of the books that I'm a little bit more confused as to why they have such a high rating, or just that I have no recollection of giving such a high rating. Right above that, we have the I Fell Victim to the Hype category. I feel like this refers to the books that have been super popular on social media and have been super highly rated and raved about on social media, and I felt at the time was maybe worthy of a 5-star, but then upon reflecting, I feel like maybe I was more influenced by other people's opinions on the book. So that's that category. Above that, we have It Was Good, But I've Evolved. I feel like this category describes kind of my reading taste when I started reading versus where I am now. Brief bark intermission. So this one is referring to books that maybe I gave 5 stars at the beginning of my reading journey, but then again, upon reflection, would maybe give a lower rating now. The next tier is Would Read Again. These are books that I think are worthy of 5 stars, still kind of hold that status in my mind, and that I would potentially read again. I'm not big on rereads, so this is kind of where those books come into play. And then I didn't think anything could top this, so these are my like true 5 stars that I still believe are 5 stars to this day and worthy of their rating. But they didn't necessarily like change my life kind of books. And then above that, I have I Live and Breathe for this book. These are books that fully changed my life, that I think about on a daily basis, that I want to like take myself and like put myself into these worlds and into these books and live within them. So those are the categories. I don't have a lot of books, I feel like, but they are a decent amount. So without further ado, let's get sorting. The first book on this list is Daydream by Hannah Grace, and I'm not gonna lie, this is what prompted the creation of How Did We Get Here? I think a common trend, I think I mentioned this in like my very first video, I am a big sports romance reader. I love me a sports romance, and so there might be a lot of sports romance rated highly on this list, or just like appearing on this list, because I do read a lot of sports romance. But with that being said, I read Daydream this year, and I remember liking it, and I remember the plot, but I don't remember it being so good that it was worthy of a 5 star. So I am going to put it in How Did We Get Here, because I really don't remember it being so great that I needed to give it a 5 stars. The next book on this list is A Little Life, and I feel like we're coming in hot with this one. I did rate this book 5 stars. Do your own research, but I think I have to put it in I Live and Breathe for this book. I do think that this book changed my life, and I haven't read anything like it, so I do think it belongs there, despite everything that it is. The next two books are part of a series. They're part of the, I don't know what the series is called, but the first book is Spark of the Everflame. I think I gave that like 4 stars, but after that, the books only get better, at least in my opinion. So Glow of the Everflame is the second book in the series, and I think I would give this would read again. It was good, and I really liked it, but I think the next book in the series was better. But it was a 5-star read for me. Which brings us to Heat of the Everflame. I would put this at, I'm going back and forth between I didn't think anything could top this and would read again. It's better than Glow, but I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of books in I didn't think anything could top this. I feel like I'm very passionate about the books that I give 5 stars, and even though they might be some controversial opinions, I feel like a lot of them are gonna be up in this I didn't think anything could top this category, which I don't know if that's entertaining to watch then, but I'm gonna keep it at I didn't think anything could top this. It was a very good book, and I'm eagerly anticipating the next one whenever it comes out. The next book is Fall With Me by Becca Mack. This is the 4th book in the Playing for Keeps series, which is a hockey romance. I'm gonna put it at would read again. It was very good. I love all of Becca Mack's books, and the way that she writes characters and the found family in her books is some of my favorite writing ever. I don't know, people don't take sports romance seriously, but I think that the way that she writes her characters, some people think that they are like unrealistically perfect, and to that I say I don't really care, because I'm reading for fun, and that's all I have to say about that. I can't even talk about it. Like, you can't say anything bad to me about her men. Like, it'll go in one ear out the other, because they are all perfect in my eyes. But yes, that is the 4th book in this series. Next book we have is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I really liked this book. I feel like it got controversial reviews once it came out. I feel like people were maybe expecting more than what it gave. But like I said, easily entertained. So I would give it a would read again. I don't know if it was as good as Powerless. And I'm really not one for a cliffhanger when the series isn't finished, but I feel like that's just typical with everything. So I'll put it at would read again. I would read it again, and it was good for what it was. Next up is Powerful. This is the novella between Powerless and Reckless, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember it. I remember like the rough summary of what happened, but I don't super remember it. I think I'm gonna put it at I fell victim to the hype. I honestly don't even know if it was that hyped up, but I think that I was just reading this at a point where like everyone was reading it and everyone was excited to like get a little crumble of the world that she created, and so I feel like it's good there. Not much to say about that one. Next up, we have Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. I also love Lauren Asher's writing in some of her books, and I love a single dad romance. Anytime you give me, even single parent in general, I will eat that up every single time. Which explains why there are many single parent romances in this list because I love them. I don't know what it is about them, but I'll eat it up every single time. Anyway, Love Unwritten. This is the second book in the Lake Wisteria Lakefront something. It's like the spin-off of the Dreamland Billionaires, but it takes place like on the lake. Anyway, that's not really relevant. I would give this would read again. I think it was good, but I think there are better books out there that she's written. Next up is God of Ruin by Rena Kent. This is, I don't even know what number book in that whole series, but this is Landon and Mia's story. I feel like a lot of people like God of Fury, I think, which is like a couple books, either the book before this one or a couple books before. I liked that one. I liked this one more. I feel like this one was more emotional, and yeah, I really liked it. I do love a dark romance every so often. So I will say one thing with Rena Kent's writing that I noticed by the end of this specific series is that every book like followed the same pattern and the same just like timeline and sequence of events. And so for that reason, I'll say it was good, but I've evolved because I think while I was reading it, I read them all like consecutively, and so I think I was just like so like in the mindset of this series that I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. But now looking back, I was like, they were kind of all the same book, just with different characters' names. So it was good, but I think that I have evolved a little bit. Next up we have Throne of Glass. We have a few in Throne of Glass, and I feel like there might be a controversial take here. I'm gonna go in order of which I read them. I have Queen of Shadows, which is the 4th book. Obviously I can't say that much about it, but I would read it again 100%, but it's not. Actually, that's a lie. I would put Queen of Shadows at, I don't think anything could top this. This was one of the best books in the series, like, in terms of maintaining my attention and, like, in terms of, like, extracting emotion from me. The first 3 books I liked and they were good, but they were kind of like, you know, the books where you, like, establish the foundation and learn everything and learn about, like, where they are and what's going on. Pretty much it like builds the story, which is great, fine, but this one was the one where I feel like everything was starting to come together and like we were really starting to like get into the plot. So for that, I put it at, I don't think anything could top this. Next was the tandem read, which was Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. I don't think a lot of people give Tower of Dawn a 5-star. I think that they think it's slow, and I don't know. I might be putting words in people's mouths, but I don't think a lot of people rate Tower of Dawn super highly. I really liked it, and I credit it to doing the tandem read because I do think that if I read Queen of Shadows first and then read Tower of Dawn, I wouldn't have liked it as much because of how Queen of Shadows ends. But because I read them together, I do think I was more invested in Tower of Dawn than I maybe would have been, and for that reason, I gave it a 5-star because I did really like it, despite it being a little bit slower than all the other books. So, because of that, I'm going to put Empire of Storms at, I didn't think anything could top this because it was so good and everything about it was just great. I love a high-stakes fantasy, and I would put Tower of Dawn at would read again because I liked Empire of Storms more than Tower of Dawn, but Tower of Dawn was still good to me. I don't know why I think it gets more hate than it deserves. And then obviously Kingdom of Ash is going I live and breathe for this book. I pretty much cried the entire time reading it. I I don't know. It's like the fantasy book that I think has impacted me the most and changed me the most, and I like tear up thinking about it all the time. And I do think about it all the time. So for that, I live and breathe for it. Next up is Play With Me by Becca Mack. This is the second book in the Playing for Keeps series. And like I said, I love me a sports romance. I do think that this one is lower between the books within the series, so for that reason, I'm putting it at would read again. Next up is Binding 13. This book is part of the Boys of Tommen series, and I read it in books that I've been avoiding, or series that I've been avoiding that video, because I was very scared of starting this book and reading this book just because I didn't think I was gonna like it, because I was like, oh, it's about rugby, like I don't care about rugby. And so I read it for that video, and then I read every book after that, like immediately. And yeah, not much else to say. I live and breathe for this book. I love it so much. It's so good. And I'm doing this as the series altogether because every book in that series is a 5-star for me. I know people, again, were disappointed with how Taming 7 turned out, and I can see why. I can see why maybe people were expecting more, but I was still crying like a little baby throughout that book. So, again, I don't really understand. Easily entertained. That's all I have to say. Next up is Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. This is the first book before Love Unwritten, and I'd put it would read again. I mean, there's not really a lot to say about it. I liked it, and yeah, it was good. Next up is Powerless by Lauren Asher, or not Lauren Asher, Lauren Roberts. I read this after, I feel like, everyone else. I feel like I was pretty late to the game on this one, but when I did read it, I did really like it, and yeah, I feel like it was one of the first fantasies I read after ACOTAR. So for that reason, I'm putting it at, I didn't think anything could top this because I did think it was really good, but it wasn't like the most life-changing fantasy ever. Next up, we have The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. This is the second generation of The Deal. They're like kids, Garrett and Hannah's daughter, and so I honestly liked this one, I think, more. It's hard to say. I really liked The Graham Effect. I think I did like it more than The Deal, which might be a controversial opinion. I feel like not a lot of people talk about The Graham Effect. I really liked it. There's not much else to say. It's a hockey romance. Next up is Iron Flame. This is second book after Fourth Wing, which is part of the Empyrean series, I believe. I think a lot of people were disappointed with this book, and I will say the writing was not the greatest, but I am not an editor. I'm not a stellar writer. I don't, like, who am I to really judge someone else's writing? Do I think it was a little bit rushed and maybe could have been more well executed? Sure. But nonetheless, I liked it still, and I thought it was entertaining. And I think one thing about me is I'm not a critical thinker when it comes to reading, and I really don't put in the effort as I'm reading to like try and like guess what's gonna happen. If it comes to me super easily, and I guess like that's different, that's one thing, but I'm not like trying to put pieces together while I'm reading to figure out like what's gonna happen at the end. And so I think that helps me not be as disappointed in books and not have as like high of expectations as other people. And for that reason, I think that's why I liked it, but I can see why people choose to dislike it. I put Iron Flame at would read again. It was good. I think Fourth Wing was better. Hopefully the next book is even better. Next up is The Score by Elle Kennedy. This is Dean and Allie's book, I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna put that I fell victim to the hype. I feel like a lot of people rave about this book and say that it's one of their favorites, and I did really like it, but I feel like upon reflection, I maybe liked it a little bit less than what I gave it credit for. The next book is Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This is part of the Windy City series, which is another sports romance. This is a baseball romance. All of hers are like, or all the books in this series are of a different sport. So yes, this one's baseball. I didn't think I was gonna like it because it was baseball. Same goes for The Right Move. Same goes for The Right Move because it was basketball, and I'm, for the most part, a strictly hockey romance reader. It's just what I tend to gravitate towards. But I was very pleasantly surprised by Caught Up. The man that Kai Rhodes is, I would love to get my hands on. And it is a single parent romance, which explains a lot. I didn't think anything could top this. That is probably my favorite book of the entire series. Yeah, that's all there is to say. Next up is The Right Move. This is the second book. This is a basketball romance, if I didn't already say that. And it was also very good. If you love acts of service, you would love Ryan Shea. Would read again. I liked Caught Up more. That's just my opinion. Next up, we have Chasing Heartbreak, and I'm gonna group all these together because it's Chasing Heartbreak, Chasing Him, and Chasing Us, and they're all like books within the Dark Love series, I think, by Kat T. Mason, and it's pretty much just like a billionaire romance series. That's kind of all there really is to it. I honestly don't really remember them. I remember liking them, so I would put them in It Was Good, but I've evolved, just because I mean, these are good like palette cleansers, and they're good to just like quickly read if I want to like read something. If I'm like itching for like a billionaire romance, like these were good books. And I would recommend them if you're looking for a billionaire romance, but they weren't like anything life-changing. I think like I was just in the mood for a billionaire romance, and this like satisfied my craving, and that's probably why I gave them a 5-star. Next up is Unravel Me by Becca Mack. This whole series is on here, and I kept them all apart because I do think that these ones are like enough scattered where I can like separate my rankings on them. Unravel Me is, I would live and breathe for this book. I loved this book so much. It is also a single parent book, also a hockey romance, but it has like literally all of my favorite components like bundled up inside of this book, and it is just perfect. Adam Lockwood is just like the biggest golden retriever perfect book man ever, and I don't care if he's unrealistically perfect. I love him so much. So he does go in I live and breathe for this book because it is impeccable. Next up, we have King of Pride by Anna Huang. This is part of the Kings of Sin series. I think this is the second book. I honestly don't really remember this book. I would put it at How Did We Get Here, because I'm sure it was good while I was reading it, and it's probably the best out of all of the ones that I read in that series, but I probably would rate it lower if I reread it. Or maybe I'd give it the same rating. I just don't really remember it. So it's going How Did We Get Here? Next up, we have A Court of Silver Flames. This is the last book in the ACOTAR series, at least for now. I don't know if there's gonna be more, but this one, I think what threw me off with this book is that it's written in the third person, and this is my first time reading a book in the third person after, I think, DNFing a different thriller because I was like so taken aback, but I pushed through this one and I actually like grew to not mind it. I guess it just like was jarring at first, especially after like the first 3 ACOTAR books being written in the first person. But it was really good. I would put it at would read again. It wasn't my favorite out of the series, but it was really good. Next up we have Twisted Lies. This is the 4th book in the Twisted series. I'd put it at it was good, but I've evolved. I think it was my favorite out of the 4. But I do think that I never think about that series, and I do think that I maybe was just like following the hype around it and not necessarily like thinking critically for myself on whether or not I liked the books or not. I think I wanted to like them as much as everyone else, so I gave them a high rating. Next up we have ACOWAR. I Live and Breathe for this book, along with A Court of Mist and Fury. Those 2 are the best books in the series. I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I do think that a lot of people agree with me. And this was my first fantasy series I ever read, and they motivated me to keep reading fantasy, and I love them. So to that I say I Live and Breathe. Next up is Hunting Adeline. This is the 2nd book in the cat and mouse duet after Haunting Adeline. And this is just kind of like what happens after the first book, like a direct sequel, I guess. I think I would say it was good, but I've evolved. I liked it. That's kind of all there is to say. Is it like the best piece of literature out there? Absolutely not, but I thought it was entertaining for what it was. Again, read trigger warnings for potentially different reasons, but do read trigger warnings. Twisted Games. This is book 2 in the Twisted series. I think I fell victim to the hype about this book. I think the whole series I kind of fell victim to the hype too. It was so hyped up, especially when I was reading it, and I just don't think that it was as spectacular as everyone was making it out to be. It was good. Reese Larson is a great man, a great guy. But there were some plot points in this book that I actually just like did not like. So I don't know how this got a 5-star. It could go in either of the 2 bottom ones, but I say I fell victim to the hype. Next up is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I think I would read again. It was good. Another hockey romance. I do think I like The Graham Effect better though. But it's good, and I did really like it actually, and I have wanted to reread it, so there's that. The next book is Icebreaker, another I feel like maybe potentially controversial take. I feel like this book gets a lot of hate because of like how spicy it is, and I do agree, and I think that the rest of the books in the series get increasingly less spicy and more plot driven. That's not to say that they're not spicy, because they are, but I do think this one was the most, and I think that it was just a little jarring for some people, and maybe they didn't expect this. And I feel like this book is why sports romance and hockey romance get a bad rep, which is not fair to the entire genre. But I liked the book. I thought it was good, and I think I even reread it. I don't know if I would reread it again. So I would say it was good, but I've evolved. But I think that this book gets more hate than it deserves. That's just my opinion. The next book is Addicted to You. This is encapsulating the whole series because not a single book in that series got below a 5-star, because it is an impeccable series. It is perfect in every way, and it changed me as a person. I think it's the first super long series that I read. It's Addicted Calloway Sisters interconnected series. It is, I think, 10 books long total, and it follows just three sisters who belong to like this rich world, but there's not like a real plot to the books. It's just like character studies on them, and just like you're basically just following them through their day-to-day life and the challenges that they come in contact to within their day-to-day life. But it is absolutely perfect, and the found family in this book is like unlike any other book that I've ever read. The characters, I think about the characters in these books all the time. Like, it is, I love it. I like don't even know what to say about it because I love it so much. And it is just honestly probably my favorite series of all time. It feels like a strong thing to say, but I feel very strongly about that. Next up is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. I think I fell victim to the hype around this book. I did really like it, and again, I love a billionaire romance. I'm easily entertained. I'll die on that hill. I don't think it was my favorite of the series though, and I do think that I wanted to like it because everyone else was liking it, and I think that that influenced my rating. So for that reason, I would say it was good, but I fell victim to the hype, but it was still a good book. So it doesn't necessarily mean it was bad. Next up, we have To Hate Adam Connor. People have strong opinions about this book, and I will say I've reread this book, I think, once, maybe twice, I can't remember. One thing that did throw me off, this book is written in like, there's definitely a word for this. Again, I'm not an English major. I don't know what the word is, but it's written in like the past tense, but like present. I don't know how to there's 100% a word for this like point of view, and I really can't think of it right now, but it's like, instead of saying like she sits at the table, it's like describing what she did. So instead of saying she sits at the table and says blah 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 to blah blah blah, it's written as like she sat at the table and said blah 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 to blah blah blah. And that to me is just like, I don't know, it threw me off at first. I think as you get further into the story, you kind of get used to it and start to ignore it. But that's not why people have qualms about this book. People hate this book because of how like quirky it is and how quirky the main character is. And honestly, I read this book for the first time at the beginning of when I started reading, but I reread it probably a year or two after that, and I still did really like it. And I do understand that she has some quirks, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's what's great about reading, is that not everything has to be everyone's cup of tea. But I enjoyed it, and I thought it was fun, and he is a single dad. So again, I think that really helped me get through this book. I think that if I had to put it on this list though, I would say it was good, but I've evolved. I did really like it though, and I probably could reread it again if I actually really wanted to. Next up, we have November 9th by Colleen Hoover. I honestly think that all of these are going to go into I fell victim to the hype. These are the books that got me into reading. I think that is pretty common for everyone. I think that she is a gateway author, and that is great. And to the people who love her books, that's awesome. I love that reading is subjective and we can all have different tastes, but I do think that I read these kind of at the same time as everybody else, and there was just so much talk about them, and so many people were like, these books are so good. And honestly, I'm gonna put them at it was good, but I've evolved, because I think that at the time that I was reading them, I did truly believe that they were great, and I didn't have, because they were the first books that I read, I didn't have like anything to compare them to, and so I did think that they were like as great as people were saying, because I had no like other points of reference when like comparing them to things. And they definitely wouldn't get as high of a rating now rereading them, but that's the thing about our tastes. They change as we grow and as we mature. Next up, we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is the first book in the Empyrean series. I'm going to put it at I didn't think anything could top this because it was my favorite fantasy book until I read Throne of Glass. And for that reason, I didn't think anything could top it, and then something did top it. And so it's still one of my favorite fantasy books, but not the best, in my opinion, anymore. Next up, we have Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This book, I feel like, is underhyped. People say that this is the worst book in the series, and I don't understand how people can say that because it was so good. I was so emotional about this book like the entire time reading it, and I just thought that it was incredible. It is another single parent romance, but this time single mom, so slightly different. I'm putting it at I Live and Breathe for this book. It was so good and I will vouch for it all the time. I do think that people rank it like undeservingly low, and that's all I'll say on that. Next up is Verity. I definitely fell victim to the hype on this. I think that people talked about like how good it was and how scary it was and how, I don't know, just like thrilling it was. And again, while I was reading it, I feel like even while I was reading it, I was like trying to make myself like it more than I did. And so while I think it was good when I was reading it, like I didn't hate it, I would give it a 5-star now, and I honestly don't even think I really wanted to give it a 5-star when I read it. So there's that. Next up, we have The Cellar by Natasha Preston. These are like the only 2 books on this list that are thrillers, and that's because I've been in a very big thriller rut recently. I just like have not had any motivation to read a thriller or any desire to read a thriller. And yeah, so I read these 2 also at like the very beginning of my reading journey, and she writes a lot of, I think they're YA thrillers technically. I don't think they're adult thrillers, but I remember when I read them, I was like actually like so taken aback. But I've read more of her books more recently since like getting older, and they're definitely, I mean, you can tell that they're like written for a younger audience and just more, I don't like the term Wattpad-y, but they are, and I'm not hating on Wattpad because I was an avid Wattpad reader back in my day. And there is a time and place for a Wattpad book. I will be the first to say it. I do think like now if I was going to read a thriller, I wouldn't necessarily reach for one of hers just because all of her books tend to end in the same way, and I'm not going to say anything else on that, but like if you read one of her books, that's pretty much how all of them end. With that being said, the next book is The Cellar by Natasha Preston, and I remember really liking this when I read it, so I'd put it at it was good, but I've evolved because I do like genuinely think that I was like thrown off by the ending and like didn't expect what happened to happen, and I think the same goes for The Lost by Natasha Preston. Yeah, I like was genuinely a little surprised when I did read it, but I thought it was good at the time. That's all I can really say. Next is Play Along by Liz Tomford. This is the most recent book in the Windy City series, I think. Also a baseball romance, and I put it at would read again. It was good. Not necessarily my favorite of the series, but again, I love sports romance. And then the final book on here is Consider Me by Becca Mack, and I would put this at I didn't think anything could top this. If I can make it up there, maybe. Where'd it go? This is the first of her books that I ever read, and this is the first book in the Playing for Keeps series, and it just like immediately hooked me. And again, the found family in this book and just the way that she writes, like the dynamics between her characters and the banter between like all of them, not even just like the love interest is just like impeccable. And I will say, I do think that these books could be dated because there are some like mainstream references, and that might like irk me in the future, but for now I think it's fine. But yeah, I love her books and I love all her characters, and I honestly won't stand to hear anything else, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, this is my final list. I feel very good about where everything is. I was expecting there to be less, I think, spread and variation between the sections as there is, so I'm kind of actually impressed. But yeah, when I look at the books at the top, it makes sense, and when I look at the books at the bottom, it makes sense. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and liked listening to me yap for however long that this is. But yeah, I know I have some controversial opinions, but that's why reading is subjective and individual to the reader. But let me know if you guys have read any of these books, and if you have differing opinions, or if you agree with some of my opinions, especially on the more controversial books. I would love to hear it and just like see where people are at and why people think the way they think. I think that that's always fun, and I love a little discussion. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. I will see you guys somewhere else super soon. Bye.